This Isak Ekitike transfer saga sums up so much about modern football. It's moved on once again. In this video I'm going to be discussing the latest as I know it. Believe me, that may not be the latest as you listen to it, and I'll get into exactly why that is in today's video. It's NUFC Transfer Daily, and let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Please do subscribe, hit like on this video if you haven't already. Join the community. It's growing over 1,600 subscribers now. I can't believe how well the channel has done this summer. Let's keep the momentum going. There's no better time to join given that the news is constant every day, something fresh to talk about. It's really enjoyable but quite hard to keep up with. As you'll know from yesterday's videos, I did my daily video a little bit later yesterday after the emergence that Newcastle had made advances with Hugo Ekitike, and David Ornstein, basically as I hit publish on the video, then tweeted to say that Liverpool had moved for him as well, and had said in the video that we were waiting to see what Liverpool did. So the video is instantly out of date, even though I still think it was relevant on the Newcastle side. Now got more developments with Fabrizio Romano saying that Liverpool are now advancing with Hugo Ekitike. And what does that necessarily mean for Newcastle? What does that mean for Alexander Isak? What does that mean for the whole situation? We'll talk about that. So would you believe it? It's happened again. I was just beginning to edit this video that I filmed, and the news emerged that Newcastle has stepped out of the Hugo Ekitike deal and are looking at exploring a deal for Yoane Wissa again. We'll talk about that later on in tomorrow's video, but the Ekitike situation is quite clear now. It feels to me like, you'll see that I said later in the video, that Liverpool were testing Isak's resolve rather than Newcastle's resolve over this deal, because they didn't put a bid on the table. The value that they put on Isak's head was less than what Newcastle would have taken. It felt to me like they were trying to coax him into making a move to try and see if this deal was possible, and that hasn't happened. So Liverpool are obviously advancing with Ekitike, as I will discuss in the video, but Newcastle are out of the race and will go for Yoane Wissa. So hopefully this video still makes sense by the time you're watching it. But yeah, lots of moving parts. Discuss Newcastle's reaction to this more in tomorrow's video, but Liverpool are advancing with Ekitike. This morning Fabrizio Romano has said that they're advancing on that, which suggests that Newcastle have held firm on their Alexander Isak stance. Liverpool are steamrolling and getting quicker, and obviously that is something to discuss as well. But that is separate to the Alexander Isak thing. I think it's very deliberate on the Liverpool side of things to make it feel like it's all of one. It's a power play that Liverpool will go for Ekitike, so Newcastle can't get their contingency plan for Isak if they won't sell Isak to Liverpool. But the problem is, as we've said with that, is that Ekitike is not a direct replacement for Isak. Ekitike is coming in to play alongside Isak to replace Callum Wilson, and maybe one day step into Isak's shoes when the time is right and Newcastle are more in control. That's the idea of things. So the whole point of taking Ekitike out of the equation doesn't really work from an Isak standpoint, because Newcastle plan to have Isak anyway. Things can change still. There's still lots of question marks over what Isak wants to do. But again, last night on his video, Fabrizio Romano and a couple of other people I spoke to have said that Isak is remaining calm, keeping his powder dry, and he's not necessarily shutting the door to Liverpool, because why would he? It doesn't make sense to do that. It strengthens his position with contract talks with Newcastle. But he's also calm about what Newcastle want to do, which is offer him a new contract, make him the highest paid player in the club's history, and build around him in the Champions League next season. He's not closing the door to anything, and that's a real positive from Newcastle's perspective, because really what he needs to do to make this Liverpool move happen is shut the door to Newcastle and say, I don't want to play for you anymore, I want to go to Liverpool. And the fact that Liverpool have now progressed on to Ekitike suggests that he's not doing that, and Newcastle remain in an extremely strong position. 3 years in his contract, as I said yesterday, even if he did say that he wanted to go, 3 years in his contract means that Newcastle are still in an extremely good position. So again, these two things are separate issues. Ekitike, if Liverpool are advancing, that's a positive in terms of Newcastle. With Isak, they have to go head-to-head with Liverpool to push for that deal, or move on to another target if they want. That's a different thing. Liverpool have to go back to the drawing board, because their interest in Isak is already very conditional. They haven't actually made the bid. They insist that they're just asking the question, and the question that they're asking is below Newcastle's value. Newcastle believe it's designed to unsettle the player, and I think that's the case, but as of yet, he hasn't been unsettled. I think what Liverpool have done is made their presence known without actually doing anything to try and see if Isak will come out and say what he wants to do, which is very similar to what Manchester City did with Bruno Guimaraes last summer, I think. Bruno signed a contract with a release clause in it, which suggests that his agents and his people wanted a route out of the club if needed at some stage. But Manchester City came to the table, didn't want to pay the release clause, and basically wanted Bruno to make a fuss about it and kick up a fuss. Bruno didn't do that. He was made captain, he stayed. So even if he did have some interest in Manchester City, he didn't act on it. I think Isak is very much in the same sort of boat. I think he may be very interested in a move to Liverpool if it came about. If asked to force that issue, will he do that? At the moment, that has not been the case, and I was told yesterday that Newcastle still believe that he will not push to move, and that's why their position is so strong. Liverpool may well wrap up the Ekitike deal, in which case Newcastle will have to go back to the drawing board for another attacking target. They've already missed out on João Pedro. Those are the two main targets Newcastle had pre-Isak as well, so it would be a blow. You can't move past that, but at the same time, the fact that the biggest threat to Isak's future would move on and go and find another option would suggest that Newcastle are in a strong position. It would be something that they could live with. There are other players on the target list that we've said previously about Ollie Watkins, Yoane Wissa. Somebody mentioned Benjamin Sesko this morning as well, so we'll see whether Newcastle go in for him, because he's a player that Newcastle have tracked and do like and could be available and has a very similar sort of ceiling to Ekitike. I kind of think at the moment that Newcastle are making such a play for the forward line because Ekitike is the specific target and they have the money to do that and they're willing to do that. Whether they'll do that for another player, that's a different question for a different day. We'll see how that plays out, but Isak is relaxed and cool about the current situation, open to everything, and that is reported as a positive for Liverpool. Liverpool don't need him to be open to everything. They need him to be open only to Liverpool for this to even remotely have a chance of happening at this stage. Isak is understanding that Newcastle want to make him a contract offer. Those contract talks have not been shelved. They've not started yet, obviously, so that has to progress as well. But I think I said last season, I didn't expect him to sign a new contract in the summer anyway, because it would weaken his hand. The longer he goes on, and there's no rush to sign a new contract, he's got 3 years in his current deal, the longer he goes on, then the better terms he can get. And if you look at Bruno Guimaraes and Anthony Gordon, who had sagas throughout summers previously, they signed contracts in September, October time, and I think that's what Alexander Isak will do if he is to sign a new contract at Newcastle. Newcastle's position has only strengthened in my mind over the last 24 hours. I think things can change very quickly. Maybe you're listening to this at a point where something has changed, and if something has changed, maybe I'll come back on this evening and do another video. But at the moment, Newcastle's position is very strong. Liverpool moving on to Ekitike and actually advancing on Ekitike says quite a lot about what their answer for Newcastle is, and everything that's been reported, and this is as far as I'm aware, I think Isak is kind of keeping his powder dry to see what happens and then would then make a decision on what he wants to do later. And the fact that he and his people are allowing Newcastle to control the narrative, allowing Newcastle to say he's not for sale, and that moves the conversation on the way that Liverpool have clearly gone and found Ekitike. I think that says quite a lot about how happy Isak is to stay at Newcastle. The club still believe that at the moment things are very much calm. If Ekitike goes to Liverpool, then Liverpool move away from Isak and Newcastle can go and find another option. We've spoken about so many of them in these videos over the last weeks, and we'll see how that plays out. But the idea that this is a big power play in Liverpool's favour when they haven't even bid anything, but the money that they're talking about is way under what Newcastle would consider his valuation, and then moved on to another target, suggests that Newcastle are very much in control of this at the moment. Very happy with the way things are going, and we'll see how things develop. Thanks so much for joining me on today's video. Let me know in the comment section what you think Newcastle should do. Should they move on to another target? Are you confident that Alexander Isak will stay at the club this season? Let me know, and I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Cheers.